Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
What does the killing of a sacred deer mean?
I don't know. I mean, in relation to the film, the connection is obvious, yeah? Because it is all about death and sacrifice and, what would you sacrifice, to correct a sin or to atone for a sin. So the film is full of all those juicy and ancient questions that have always been with us, really. But what the deer itself, what the image of the sacred deer refers to, I actually don't know.
Well, I'm just having a look here. There's a suggestion on a website that it refers to the Greek myth of Iphigenia. Let's have a look.
And what is it?
I don't know Iphigenia. In Greek mythology, Iphigenia was a daughter of King Agamemnon, and Iphigenia was a princess of Argos. Agamemnon offends the goddess Artemis, who retaliates by commanding him to kill Iphigenia as a sacrifice, so his ships can sail to Troy. In some versions, Iphigenia is sacrificed at Aulis, but in others, Artemis rescues her. So basically, her dad pissed someone off and said, well, now you've got to kill her.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much the theme of the film.
In a way.
Oh, that's not the theme, that's the story.
Yeah. But, it makes the title make sense. Which is nice, because I like the title.
Yes, it's a beautiful title.
I'm glad it means something. So go on. What's give us the rough plot.
Well, the plot is basically that through carelessness and drunkenness, a heart surgeon basically kills a man.
In the operating table.
So we find out that he develops a relationship with the son of that man, partly because he feels guilty, and to atone for, what he considers his sin, though he won't admit it, really.
Yeah. So and when you say a relationship, this is a kind of he feels responsible for the kid. Really,
that's right.
In a way.
So he buys him watches, gives him money, and so on. And as the film unfolds, we actually find out something different. So basically what happens is that the son is aware of all of this and puts a curse on the man and his family. And basically he tells him that either he kills one of his children or they will all become paralyzed, begin to bleed through their eyes, and die. And when they begin to bleed through their eyes, it's too late for them.
Well, there are hours to go.
Yeah.
Hours to save them.
And that will happen to both his children and his wife unless he decides to sacrifice them himself.
Yeah, whether this...
But I think that doesn't do justice to the film in a way.
No, but we're just talking about the plot. Whether this guy actually puts a curse on his on the family or on the surgeon is not entirely... It's really not spelled out. It's just this kind of seems to happen, and the kid obviously knows what's going on, and he appears to have some sort of power over it, but you never see him, sitting down, reading an incantation. It's not that kind of a thing.
Okay, it's not that kind of film. But the effect is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, and actually that's one of the marvels of this film, that it creates a world in which this kind of thing is believable and can happen, right? So it's not magic, it's not witchcraft. While you're watching it, you're actually kind of thinking, is this possible? And then the film kind of cheats you a little bit. So, for example, at the very beginning of the film, I thought Colin Farrell was going to end up a pedophile, right? Because, the whole relationship with the kid seems so weird, right? And there's kind of quite a lot of emphasis put on the child's body and his growing body. And does he have pubic hair or, hair on his body? And, all of those questions, really, and there's also this image of this fallen youth, right, that is in the bedroom of the Colin Farrell character and the Nicole Kidman character. So I thought it was going to end up really creepy and weird, and and then of course it veers off into something else, though that sense of unease and so on remains throughout the film. So the film creates a world in which these things that logically seem really, really weird kind of are plausible and make sense and are accepted.
I never thought for a moment that there was going to be a paedophilia thing. Partly because, although I can see what you're getting at, there is an emphasis on the physicality of people and their kind of their body parts and their body hair and things. It's the kid who brings it up with Colin Farrell's character all the time, and he's very uncomfortable about it. What I thought was going to be the case early on was that he would turn out to be the kid's dad. The reason that he's looking after this kid is because he feels responsible because he had him years ago out of marriage or whatever, which is why early on the dad is not mentioned. As it turns out, they're just telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like everyone in this film is telling the truth.
Yeah.
There's no secrets being sort of...
That thought crossed my mind as well. And the film has a fantastic eerie score, right, where everything is disjunctive, right? Like
it pierces. It has these kind of single string notes that whine and...
Yeah, it has this core of a horror film, really.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I love the whole look of it. It's like it's in these extremely wide shots which distort all the space.
Yeah,
right?
wide angle shots rather than wide shots. Like it'll be the camera. It's almost like CCTV. The camera's placed in a high corner of a room, and everything's distorted, but you see the entire room from up above.
That's right.
And the people feel very small
and significant, and in a weird space, right? In an unsettled, angular. Yeah, it's kind of, it's not a normal cinema view, and it's not a normal person's view, really. You know, it's a wide angle, almost like this extreme wide angle lens, yeah, like distended space, which actually is so distended that it skews it, right? So actually, you don't even get proper rectangular lines on it. Everything is skewed, right? Which I thought was kind of like wonderful. And also, another thing that the film uses over and over and over again is this either zooming in or zooming out, which is very slow and deliberate, yeah, and kind of, you know, and forces you to not only look, but actually it's almost like to change your thinking as the zooming goes on, right? Like kind of, you know, it's like that Michael Snow film, the you know, the slow kind of creeping in, you know, so as the zoom kind of moves, your sense of space and of the space for action in the film.
Michael Snow film.
Yeah, there's what's it called? There's a very famous Michael Snow film called Longitude or something, and it's basically just kind of a camera slowly zooming in to something.
Okay, so it's funny because Yorgos Lanthimos, who directed this, wrote and directed, or co-wrote and directed on his own. Previously made The Lobster and previously made Dogtooth, which is the one I haven't seen. I've seen him described as Michael Haneke with jokes.
Right, okay.
There's a little bit of that, isn't there?
Wavelength is the film that I'm thinking of.
Right. He kind of he has a certain view, Yorgos Lanthimos, of kind of the bourgeoisie or the upper middle class and the way they live, and kind of he likes to introduce sort of disturbances to that way of life. Like I haven't seen Dogtooth, but I know the premise is that these children are kept captive throughout their childhood by the parents. In The Lobster, the entire world is kind of skewed, so people kind of still appear to be, in some respects, living a kind of normal life, but just the way everyone interacts is weird and different because societal kind of expectations and norms are different. And in this film, this film in a way kind of fits reasonably squarely into that tradition of a normal family, a stranger turns up and starts ruining things.
Yes,
it's not quite that, because the kid is not a stranger. The kid has this pre-existing relationship with Colin Farrell's character.
No, but he's a stranger, actually. No, I think that describes it
to the rest of
perfectly.
the family. He certainly is.
Yeah, and actually to even to the Colin Farrell character until they meet. Yeah. So the child is not somebody he's known previously. He's met him in the hospital when his father came.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I mean, but before the film starts, it's clear that Colin Farrell's character, his relationship with him has pre-existed.
Yeah.
For a few months at least. Well, obviously since, in retrospect, you realise that it's since
the father died.
The father died.
Yeah.
Then at some point he was having contact with this kid.
Yeah. So
and he does say in the film, within the last 6 months, it's happened more and more.
Yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit, because the film begins with this image of a beating heart, you know, and you can argue that the whole film is really about that, and it's kind of, you know, it's quite weird in a way because the film is almost deadpan, right? Like, you know, Colin Farrell plays his character, and as indeed do all the actors in this film, almost in an unemotional way, yeah, to begin with. It's all kind of monotonal, it's all softly spoken. It's almost like there's a lack of reaction to of expected reaction to what's happening. Everything is downplayed, right, and kind of minimized. So you get the feeling that they're unfeeling, that they're kind of calculated and withdrawn, and yeah, so kind of
Yeah, it's not just quiet, but it's also unnatural,
yes,
stilted. This
Yes.
is why, I mean, about 10, 15 minutes in, I said to you, is this directed by the guy who did The Lobster?
Yes.
It's very easy. Like, if and that's quite apart from the fact that Colin Farrell's in both of them,
Yes.
doing very much the same thing for a lot of it. It's he's got a real style. It's
Yes.
identifiable like that.
yes,
The way that people
So
respond to each other and move.
yeah, we must specify we didn't know anything about the film. I knew that it was a Yorgos Lanthimos film, but I didn't know anything else about it. Actually,
I didn't even know the title.
yeah. So it's good that you mentioned that his style is recognizable because indeed it is, you know, and it's deadpan and it's funny and it creates this very kind of internal world. It's a world, but really kind of, you know, what he gets you to think about and to maneuver your way through is in a way the human heart or human feeling, really. Yeah, in the film, I think.
That's interesting.
Yes, because you know the to me the emotional climax of the film is when the Colin Farrell character faces the threat of having to kill one of his children, right? And the whole he breaks everything in the kitchen, right? You know, and he uses, you know, those words like you know, that what they need to save their children, some kind of witchcraft. So he says like, you know, I forget what he said. You need a hair of dog and this toad and, you know,
And pubes.
yeah, and virgin's pubes or something, you know, and he goes all over the kitchen kind of pretending to look for them, but really just venting his fear and his anger and his despair, right? And I thought that was like, you know, it's kind of an emotional climax in the film, really, for him to let go like that.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly very little. Rather in that way that in Blade Runner, when Ryan Gosling's character explodes, it comes after such a long time of such little emotional expression from him that the power of it is emphasized by that, and it's a real release in the killing of a sacred deer.
I love the films dealing with a world in which not everything can be rationally explained, right? So, you know, so this is different than witchcraft or sci-fi or the supernatural or horror. You know, it reminded me of, you know, as a child, just kind of, you know, the way that things were explained were often kind of through things that were not scientific, but at the same time they were not necessarily religious, right? Other things existed in the world, and sometimes kind of, you know, explaining things that happened had recourse to legend or you know, fantasy or hearsay or stories, right? And I think kind of, you know, the world, this film begins really rationally. They're doctors, right? Kind of, you know, everything has its place. Everything is reasonably explained. Yeah, like kind of, you know. But then something happens which their kind of rational scientific world can't explain, and it's almost like their whole belief system crumbles in a way.
I'm not sure I agree with that, just because it's not the kind of curse. Let's call it a curse. It's not the curse that kind of starts to. I don't think their beliefs get shaken, because the moment that, well, for one thing, Colin Farrell's character seems to know about the curse before the kid tells him about it. He tells him over a table in the cafeteria, and he comes out with it very quickly, which is kind of the explaining the rules for the audience as well. They'll get paralyzed, and then they'll refuse food to the point of starvation, and then they'll bleed from their eyes, and then they'll die.
Yes.
And although it can partly, I suppose, be attributed to the fact that there's so little emotional reaction from the character at this point, Colin Farrell's character really doesn't respond to this, and it's like he knows it already, and he certainly doesn't seem to think, how can this be possible? You're just making it up. He just believes it.
I didn't read that scene like that at all. I read that scene as him, completely discounting the vengeful rantings of an adolescent boy who's clearly in pain.
Okay.
I read it as him dismissing it. And that's why he has so much trouble even believing it afterwards. Like it takes him a while when, his son kind of loses, the use of his legs to actually even believe it, right? He thinks the child is psychosomatic. The film actually...
Well, that's before he's told about the curse.
No, I think that happens after the curse.
No, he loses his feeling his legs first because that's the reason that the kid's in the hospital, because he visits the son in bed when he's lost his use of his legs,
right.
And then he says, "Meet me in the cafeteria," and that's when he tells Colin Farrell, "This is the this is the curse."
Okay.
I mean, you might be. I think maybe it's up to interpretation. I didn't question for a moment that people just believed this. This was just something that was the case, and they needed to. So Colin Farrell, I guess you read his responses from then on as having trouble believing it. I read them as having trouble working out what to do about it.
Oh no, I read it as him, having trouble believing it really, and I think even when it happens to the daughter, like. I think there's also at that point an ambivalence, about the curse and so on. You think, is the girl, is she in cahoots with the boy to make the father believe this, right? But actually, it's not happening. It took me a while to actually accept that actually there was a curse,
okay.
Right? And he keeps searching for a scientific, rational explanation. That's why he gets angry at his wife, who tries to psychologize it and says it's psychosomatic, right?
True.
So...
well, I suppose I kind of felt that the film... when you said earlier that the film sets up this world in which slightly weird things can happen, and I don't feel it's particularly unique. I think there are several films like that. For instance, Charlie Kaufman kind of gave birth to a whole kind of subgenre of quirky comedies where... there's like a normal world, except there is you can delete people's memories, or a normal world except what's that Paul Giamatti film where you can have your soul removed and put into a test tube and shipped across the country or something like there is this kind of subgenre that in a way this film fits into, of a normal world, but there's just one particular quirk in it and it has a kind of pseudoscientific sort of property or kind of quality that kind of that is the centerpiece for what the characters behave around.
But this doesn't even have any pseudoscientific, the parents are scientists. They work at they're doctors. They work in a hospital. The wife, Nicole Kidman, runs her own clinic, right? So that's their world, and he makes speeches to all of the doctors, right? So he's obviously like a famous kind of doctor. And then all of a sudden, a young man says, "This will happen to your children, unless you kill one of them," and then it happens. So actually, there's no like pseudoscientific,
sure,
anything
not
given for
pseudoscientific,
it.
But I think
this is just a world in which actually curses operate, right?
Yeah, but in other words, I mean, kind of that didn't feel like the challenging part to me. I felt like I just accepted that, and my interpretation of what the characters in the film did was they more or less accepted it as well.
Well,
and went on.
For me, it's not a challenge. I mean, I think part of Yorgos Lanthimos' skill is that in fact you do accept it. It's not it makes its own kind of sense. But I'm telling you that kind of dramatically, to me, it's odd. And welcome. So odd in a very good sense.
Yeah.
Because it enables things to happen in which then kind of like the main focus becomes a moral and ethical one, really. Yeah, kind of, what are the repercussions of your actions, right? But actually, I think very interesting as well, it's calling for justice to, you know, outside the world of men or something, right? Like, kind of, yeah. So the Colin Farrell character has basically, through carelessness and drunkenness, killed a man and destroyed a family. You know, like in Greek mythology or the Old Testament, the repercussion is he must also sacrifice the same in order to right a moral order. Now, that's not the way that we see or perceive justice as happening in our world. Some crimes don't get solved. Some people do pay. Some people get away with it. Yeah, kind of. This is a moral world that he presents to us, right? But it's a moral world that has to have recourse to either story or legend or something that seems a little bit supernatural but isn't quite, to right the moral order. I think that's kind of quite extraordinary and as I said, really welcome. I was thrilled to see it.
It's certainly welcome. I mean, I must say, I just can't say I enjoyed the film, really. Despite the fact that there's food for thought, and like you say, it's really welcome. I mean, it's still kind of, it's trying to kind of ask these questions and do so in this really idiosyncratic sort of artistic framework. But I can't say I liked. I certainly didn't like it in the way that I liked The Lobster. It's not going for laughs in the way that Lobster is. I think that might be part of it.
No, though it has them.
It has them.
It
but
has,
it's certainly playing more for drama.
Yes.
And these kind of ethical.
Though it has quite black humor.
Yeah.
Like The Lobster did. I loved it. I must say. And I loved it because it's kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of asking those questions. What is a life worth? Kind of, what reparations do you have to make? Like, what is justice, right? So it's very interesting that throughout all of this, the young man who's the character that, causes all this misfortune to the family, you're still sympathetic to him.
No, I wasn't sympathetic to him at all.
Weren't you?
No, I couldn't stand the little fucker.
Oh. I was. I mean, he was seeking justice.
Yeah, but he was aware of how belligerent he was being to three people who had nothing to do with it.
That's the question that the Nicole Kidman character asks him. I haven't done anything. Why should I suffer? Why do I need to suffer? But likewise, you could say, well, I haven't done anything. Why am I suffering?
Well, that's true. But when you're in a position of knowledge, yeah. Well, and he says to her, this isn't fair, but it's as close to justice as we can get, or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, I thought he was a dickhead.
No, you see, I kind of, to me, he's like the hero of the film. Because actually, the way that you see him, he's always very responsible. He's very quiet. Yeah, he's kind of, he looks after his mother. Yeah, he's trying to kind of make her happy. And he's very kind of soft-spoken and dogged. Right, and yeah, I thought he in a way, he's the hero of the story. He's the one who kind of brings justice. And again, justice in this furious way, right? Like in a
well, it's certainly a kind of biblical eye for an eye.
Yeah, it's very much kind of Old Testament in that way. But I think, and that's interesting because on the one hand, when you think of like Old Testament, you do think of like thunder and lightning and bolts and people dying and plagues and and this actually is not. It's all done in a very deadpan, minimalist way, that I think garners great emotional force as it unfolds, and I think also develops its themes in really kind of very complex ways, and it has incredible imagery, kind of imagery that will stay with you. The eyes bleeding, the Nicole Kidman laid out like a corpse under anesthesia. That's what turns her husband on. when she.
Well, what do these? I mean, there part of what I end up not liking about it is, so for instance, Nicole Kidman kind of playing dead or playing under anesthetic for her husband, or the girl, the daughter that is, starting to speak in kind of very high sort of ways, as if being kind of channeling the boy, and when she can briefly get up and walk again. There are these things that these details that the film doesn't feel holistic. It feels like there are ideas that are quite scattered.
Oh, I don't agree. I think to me it feels very holistic. I mean, you have the children both playing up to the parents, but for their lives, right? So because basically each of the children is arguing kill the other, right? But actually kind of, not saying it in those ways, saying, I will love you, I will take care of you, says the girl. Or the boy says, I will now cut my hair, blah, So kind of.
But that's not what. But what about when she can walk, for instance? What about Nicole Kidman?
Well, to me, the moment where she can walk in the hospital is actually, one of the moments in which Nicole Kidman becomes resigned to the knowledge that it is true that he does have that power,
that's certainly true,
and that he's the cause of it. So
Nicole Kidman does do something better than anyone else in the world, I think, which is she's really good at reacting at like a 45-degree angle. She's really good at reacting to children telling her creepy things. She did the same thing in Birth, all over the place.
Well,
that kid just creeped her the fuck out, and no one else could have done that the same.
I don't like her because I can never warm up to her, but really, I'm agog with admiration. She's just fantastic, really. And kind of, and again, I was talking earlier about images. The image of her wanking her husband's anesthetist just so she can get information out of him. The cold, determined way that she does it. It's almost funny, right? But there's also something like driven and tragic and sad and in that kind of desperation, really. And I it's a fantastic performance and it's a fantastic image, really. So I think it's a film, to see again. I mean, I in a way I do know what you mean, because I think almost all the film's pleasures are kind of intellectual ones, really. Like the world is an odd world. The characters are unlikable. The performances, partly they're so great because they're not afraid of being disliked, right? Neither of these two people, the Nicole Kidman or the Colin Farrell character, are likable in any way, right? And they're certainly not warm, right? So, for an actor to be able to kind of depict that in that way without making themselves kind of seem lovable, I think is really quite extraordinary.
I don't think, it's not that I don't respect it or kind of think it's interesting, but and it's not even to say that you should be able to sort of quote unquote enjoy something to enjoy it, but I think films work primarily, they make you feel. That's when a film is successful, and this film didn't make me feel very much. It made me think, but it was quite, I don't know, kind of reserved. Like I'm finding it more interesting talking about it now, but in the cinema it felt distant to me.
Yes, I loved it, and I can understand what you mean about it feeling distant. It's certainly not a film that kind of offers easy pleasures, but it definitely made me feel in the way that you expect films to. I mean, there's that moment where the child bites. He's in prison and he's all wrapped up, and the only recourse that he's got is his teeth. And my God, that really jolted me, right? And even worse,
he bites his arm.
When he bites his own arm, so he can no longer hurt the other. So he makes Colin Farrell witness his pain, right? And how far he's willing to go to extract kind of vengeance and justice. I mean, that's why to me that was amazing.
You
right?
jumped.
You jumped,
but
and I jumped for all the right reasons, because you feel the emotional force behind it, and actually it also has a thematic push, right? Kind of, so the child is telling him look, kind of, this is how far I'm willing to go, and this is what you've done to me, and you've done this, right? Like, so I kind of, I think
I just, well, I mean, I guess just two different worlds. I didn't connect with it. That's what it is. It's not. It's maybe it's my fault. It's not the film's fault because the film is pretty much off a piece, and it's
Yes.
like it's. I mean, it's not doing anything it doesn't mean to do.
Yes.
Clearly, it's just not my cup of tea. Maybe
right. Oh well.
not enough. Not enough gladiatorial fights on other planets.
I wonder two things. I wonder if we expect, pleasure or at the cinema, if we're just kind of like, what is it, reacting machines or something, right? Like, you push our buttons and we react in a particular way. I think the cinema at the moment is so kind of unimaginative that actually something that feels like really original, and also, I don't like to use the word serious, but you know what I mean, that it has kind of a complex kind of thematic, a working out of ideas dramatically that is, has a consistent theme, and that it's a very complexly done, and that it examines kind of an issue, really beautifully dramatically, but from many different points of view, or it examines the repercussions of those actions in kind of very sophisticated ways. I think we're really not used to having kind of films throw that at us. Though now that I'm thinking, I mean, I think Mother did, I think Blade Runner did in very different ways, right? And I think this is kind of that kind of film. It feels like really original, even though you're right that it is of a piece with, The Lobster. Yeah, you can tell that it's made by the same sensibility, but nonetheless, it does feel like a really original piece of work.
Yeah.
And I think it's one to be welcome. I mean, I'm kind of delighted that it's playing at Cineworld. It's the kind of film that you would have expected at one point, for a smaller art cinema venue to be showing. So on the one hand, I'm really glad that Cineworld's showing it, because actually the smaller venues now, or the programming that they're showing, is really pretty much, the blockbusters that Cineworld is showing, but a month later. So, there's not necessarily spaces for the small, inventive, quirky, serious films. I mean, I think it's a film that makes demands of an audience. It's actually almost in many ways an archetypal art cinema film.
Oh, yeah.
Where you come out of the cinema and you just want to talk about it. You just want to, what was it about? How did you feel? Yeah, like the kinds of conversation that we've been having now. I think, to me, it's fantastic. I'd happily see it again.
Yes, I mean, I agree with all that, but I am struggling with it. I'm struggling to connect or feel like it didn't to me feel like it was making me think about, how far would you go. I mean, I don't think it is about any idea of how far would you go to extract vengeance, but it's certainly trying to, I don't know what it is. It's about this making a demand on Colin Farrell's character that he's not expecting, but he is sort of.
It's a kind of Sophie's choice question that the film is asking of him, right? Like, which of your family members would you kill to save the rest? Because either they all die, or by killing one, you save two others. Right? It
doesn't press it, does it? That's almost like a side question to really the kid's desire for revenge.
They all go together, right? Because the child, even though he's in many ways doing the wrong thing, right? Two wrongs don't make a right. Nonetheless, his action has a moral force. Yes, you have deprived me of all of this, right? And through carelessness, right? Like just through carelessness, through lack of attention, irresponsibility. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't deliberate. It wasn't even kind of murder. It was just like you
shouldn't be drunk and operate on someone's heart.
Yeah, you didn't care. Yeah, you played with people's lives. So, kind of, I think the film asks those moral questions with that kind of moral force in which nothing is absolutely clear cut, and I think rendered more powerfully because everything is so understated. It's almost like what's the word? Um, yeah, the characters the responses are so measured and thought through and soft spoken. They're almost recessive.
The whole response. I mean, every time you look at Colin Farrell's face, it's like it's the Kuleshov effect all the time. It's just total blankness, and you could put anything on either side of it and get it completely different. Like,
Yes.
I mean that's what he is. And again, actually, I think rather like Ryan Gosling in Blade Runner. I think the same sort of thing, responding to everything with a real stillness to the
Yes.
point of inactivity, kind of almost entirely. But it's about absorbing what you've just seen, and kind of giving the character and giving you as the audience member time and space to absorb what you've seen, react and respond.
I think the wonderful thing about the Colin Farrell character is that he's almost in denial. He's in denial throughout, right? But denial in the sense that, he attaches himself to the banal, right? To whether you're eating mashed potatoes or, what's the best strap on a watch or things like that, because actually he can't bear to cope with any of the more difficult questions, right? Like, kind of to even think about what he's done would be so destroying to him that,
There's actually, it felt very similar to The Lobster, that not to go on about too much, but maybe not. I mean, I don't remember the details. I only saw The Lobster once. I don't remember if his character was obsessed with minutiae of meaningless things the way he is in this. But there was certainly an element of trying to distract himself from more important things by just blathering. That's what his character did in that film a lot. Just talked and talked and talked.
Yes.
Whereas there's this whole the whole thing was, if you don't have a relationship, then you die, and that was a kind of very scary prospect.
Yes.
That he would just talk over it.
Yes. Though, I mean, I think, again, the sex scene, it's so odd and resonant somehow, right? So, like, the wife is really keen on pleasing him, right? And he's very precise about, the dress that she wears and, what looks best on her and, and things like that. So, but then their sex life is her pretending to be under anesthesia and him not even really touching her, just kind of wanking to her image until he comes and then he touches her, right? Which is so,
Very realistic.
I hope not for your sake, sweetie. But yeah, it's obviously like a kind of a symbolic. Yeah, what does it mean, that image, really? What does that say about them as people? And kind of, and I think it's really interesting. And there's so many other images. The images of him, with the mask on his face, making himself go round and round and round so that he doesn't have to choose whom he kills. Kind of, that's such a powerful image as well, really. Yeah. And it's kind of like a powerful image conceptually as well as an execution, really. Yeah, like it's not just the image you see, but the idea behind it that just kind of resonates as well. I loved all of that, really.
It's a terrifying climax. But I mean, there's only one way it could go, wasn't there?
Well, actually, I thought there were many ways that it could go, because I actually thought one possibility was that he would kill them all and then kill himself, and then kind of you could have had that play out as like, this crazy man who kills his family, has a nervous breakdown and kills his family. That could be one option, right?
I never crossed my mind. He's a man of science. He knows that one is better than three.
Well, you say that now, but when I was watching it, I certainly felt that was an option.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think those things resonate. And also, so each of the characters begs for their life. And I'd forgotten, but including Nicole Kidman saying, why don't we kill a child? Like, we're still young. We can have another. I mean, those kinds of conversations are like, very powerful and interesting, and they make sense.
Yeah.
And you see kind of people's, self-preservation kind of, come in full force, right? Like, I love my brother, but kill him because I'll be really devoted to you, right? Like all of those conversations, I think, kind of to me, really resonated. Yeah. I think it's a really, really rich film.
It's one of those seedy underbelly films, isn't it? Everyone's horrible, it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, well, everyone's, everyone loves, but everyone's self-interested, and everyone's self-involved and careless of others, right? And actually, what the film ends with is this image, this terribly sad image of just kind of two witnesses, or no, two sets of people, or the young boy and what's left of the family, kind of looking at each other incredibly sadly across a diner, each aware of what the other has done, and each sad about it. Which did you read it that way?
I suppose sort of. But I didn't see sadness in the kid's eyes, but maybe I'd spent the whole film disliking him, so maybe I, was predisposed to think he was
There was this
unpleasant. But
these long looks between him and the girl, and then we got to see all of the characters drift out the door of the diner one by one, and it's almost like the only one who wouldn't look back is the Colin Farrell character.
Yeah.
Right. So. Yeah, it's like he still couldn't. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of very moving and sad and kind of things that reverberate that you can't quite fix the meaning of yet, but that kind of expand in the mind a bit.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Let's go see Jigsaw again.
I mean, to be fair, I'll give you it was better than Jigsaw. Jigsaw wasn't very good, but but the thing is, he's not Lanthimos is not incapable of affecting me emotionally, because he absolutely did with the Lobster. In the Lobster, I felt this incredible sense of pity for every single character that was trying to find a real connection but couldn't, or was kind of stifled by the world that they lived in. I felt pity for absolutely everybody. But in this, I felt more. I don't know if I was distracted by the details, or if I didn't find the concept original enough. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's just it just didn't quite capture me as it did you. It's one of those things.
Yeah, well,
it happens.
It happens.
I mean, even Jigsaw didn't capture me.
Well, I suppose some.
I think I'm becoming heartless.
Some things just end up being a question of taste, but I do hope that people give this a chance. Really.
Oh yes.
It is kind of. It does feel like fresh and original and quirky, and something with its own style that's trying to communicate something interesting and complex.
Yes.
All right, well, let's leave it there.
The last word is yours. The last word is yours. What about Groundhog Day's in it?
Yes, Groundhog Day's in it.
I prefer Groundhog Day.
There you go. Well, Groundhog Day is a great film. But it's a very different kind of film to this one.
It's a lot funnier. If this had Bill Murray in it.
The thing about Bill Murray is he's too expressive. You would know what Bill Murray is doing even when he's doing nothing.
What about Lost in Translation Bill Murray?
He was extraordinarily expressive.
He just sat there and did nothing.
He was extraordinarily expressive.
It's a long time since I saw that film. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, well, I thought Colin Farrell was wonderful.
He was.
And I thought Nicole Kidman was wonderful. It was very interesting to see Alicia Silverstone as a middle-aged mom. She was very interesting and quirky. I think she overdid it a bit. Like, she's too expressive, right? And she's too consciously expressive. So I didn't think she was as good as the others. And the young boy,
Maybe, but I actually quite liked that she imposed on the Colin Farrell character so clearly, and partly by, I think, being so eager, so expressive, and she also has the film has a few laughs, but she has probably the best one, which is I won't let you leave until you've had my tart. That's a laugh line.
Anyway, and the boy, what's his name?
Barry Keoghan.
He was wonderful.
He was in Dunkirk. He was the young lad who dies in Dunkirk. Huh. The one who.
Oh yeah, the one who goes on the
one on
who
the boat.
joins the boat.
That's right,
yeah,
and he gets in the newspaper at the end.
He's fantastic in this.
It's also set at Christmas. It seems to be, like all the horror films.
I didn't notice that.
Well, they sing "Carol of the Bells" at one point, don't they? That's when she falls down.
Yeah,
It's not expressly said at Christmas, but Christmas seems to just be something that pops up when people want to be a bit creepy. Remember that film?
I mean,
The Box.
Yeah, but I think in this film, basically, it's set in the fall. Yeah, kind of. It's set in the school year, and so on. But
Tesco would be selling Christmas presents by this point.
I mean, what I wanted to know, and because I have a bad memory for that, is, what were they singing?
Carol of the Bells.
And what were the lyrics, and how did they connect with what we're doing? Because actually, there's definitely something in that, because we hear the whole song.
Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old, meek and the bold. Ding dong, that is their song. With joyful ring, all caroling.
Okay, so
Merry,
that's the
merry,
opposite.
merry, merry Christmas. Merry, 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 merry
Okay,
Christmas.
so that's the opposite of what we see. Yeah.
Well, therefore it's meaningful.
Well, yeah. I mean, no, you have to wonder what the film is trying to communicate with that, because it's very beautiful. It's all these young people. They're all singing together. They're singing this particular song, and that's the moment where she loses, her legs, her ability to walk. So, also in relation to the high school, what I thought was very moving was, Colin Farrell going to talk to the principal to see, which of his children was more killable, which one was doing better in school, which one had good behavior and which one didn't. The kind of the boy was better at some things, but the young girl excelled at music and literature.
He says straight to the teacher. He says, "If you had to keep one, which one would you keep?"
Yes.
Yeah. That's not moving. That's just funny.
Well, it was moving and funny. I thought it was kind of desperate and humorous as a result. Anyway, let's wrap it up.